So the Eagles made a bit of a decision with the move at safety, but what impact does that have on Justin Simmons? And another Simmons is still available, which makes a lot of sense for Fangio's defense. Plus, a couple more top 30 visits to update on, and with the pressure on Bryce Huff and Nolan Smith to perform, could this exciting pass rusher be the depth the Birds need in the draft? Let's talk about it. But first, let's run it. What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. And we start with Philadelphia getting an appearance from Jason Kelce's wife, Kylie, to share more about the awesome work the Eagles Autism Foundation does, and to promote acceptance with their All Abilities Clinic on the Today Show. Obviously, not a surprise for those in the know, but the Kelces have been doing some incredible work for years partnering with the foundation, and have had a massive impact on Philly. By the way, for those wondering about the WrestleMania coming at the link this weekend, apparently Jason Kelce has been reached out to, so it wouldn't surprise me if he's a part of the event. Which, speaking of, and another guy who's been a part of several different community events and making an impact for the city of brotherly love, is Haason Reddick. Unfortunately, his departure to the New York Jets via trade is definitely a downer. And not gonna lie, hearing his initial presser was difficult.
As far as the Eagles go, though, it wasn't about what he has left in the tank or anything like that. You know, it's a business, and sometimes hard decisions got to be made, even if you don't like them. I love it. You know, you got dogs at each level on the defense, literally, from inside interior guys like Quinnen, Kinlaw, even on the outside, Jermaine, Will, you know, JFM. You look at the inside linebackers, you got C.J. Mosley, Quincy, like those two guys are just dogs themselves. And then even, you know, for DB, Sauce, he speaks for, you know, his name speaks for himself. You know, and then even seeing like DJ Reed and what he's done over the last couple of years, and you know the name that he's making for himself. I'm happy to be around a group of guys like this, a talented roster such as this one. It's going to be fun, man. I don't think anybody's ready for what's about to happen, but it's going to be fun. And it's going to be fun to watch as well.
I won't sugarcoat it. It's going to be hard watching Haas get a sack and then proceed to do the gladiator celebration. Look, it's a given that a lot of people are upset with Howie Roseman and wondering what he's doing after this trade. Although there are some, like Hugh Douglas, who are okay with the transaction.
I'm going to tell you like this, man. In a small sampling size, I think Bryce Huff has the potential of being a better pass rusher. And I know people look at me and they're like, oh, man, you're crazy. Haason, da-da-da-da-da. Man, in this, go look at his rushes compared to Haason Reddick rushes. And the reason why I feel that way, because he's more of a physical rusher. He has, to me, more of an ability to strike fear in the heart of a tackle and beat a tackle in a one-on-one situation than Haason Reddick. Now, Haason Reddick is fast. There's no question about that, and he beats a lot of people off the corner. But the physicality that Bryce plays with, I really like, and I think that's what's missing in this game today.
All right, I can appreciate looking at the glass half full. Heck, I mean, a lot of you guys have mentioned that in the comments. And he was not wrong in the sense that Huff was/has been the best pass rusher based off of win rate. Add on top of that, yes, he does seem to have more of that physical bull rush ability too. Not that Haas can't do it, but Huff has shown it more often on tape. Still, I'm with those of you that are struggling to see how this works for the Birds. I know, I've heard those, like I mentioned, saying 2026 makes more sense, since Aaron Rodgers will be gone, and unlike the Cowboys, the Jets are going all in. So that third round or slightly possible second round pick is pretty valuable. If we're being honest though, and like I've said before, it's probably not going to be a second round pick. Remember, it's not just the 10 plus sacks that Haas has to get, it's 67.5% of playing time. And if you know the Jets or watch the Jets, they use a rotational system, so most likely Haas isn't getting there. Realistically though, this just comes down to whether Nolan Smith and Bryce Huff live up to the hype. If they do, great, we're golden. I mean, Howie's a genius, everyone can celebrate, it's fantastic. But if they don't, then we're in really bad shape.
How could you possibly think this is a good idea?
A lot of ideas were not appreciated in their time.
Hold on, let's pump the brakes there, because as much as I've seen people saying Nolan Smith is a bust, I will continue to remind you that we don't know that yet. Like my guy David said, number 3 averaged just 11 snaps a game last season, being behind Reddick, Sweat, Barnett, and BG. Now the hierarchy has changed, so once he's rotated in with 400 plus snaps, the production will follow. At the same time, I don't think anyone would argue that Nolan didn't really belong out there ahead of those names. Well, I guess Barnett's a different story, but you get my point. However, after having the offseason surgery to clean up the shoulder and being in a system that will no doubt utilize his athleticism, I can guarantee you we'll come away from this season feeling much better about where Nolan Smith is. But even with my allegiance to the 23-year-old, we could certainly use some more depth on the D-line. While we're talking about defense, let's talk about the sponsor of today's video, Surfshark. Surfshark is an award-winning VPN that keeps your online identity safe. Think of them like the Eagles' offensive line for protection online, where they'll encrypt all of your valuable information while also allowing you to change your virtual location. Which, who knows, could be useful if you're in another country or on vacation and can't get access to all the draft coverage you like. There's definitely a whole lot of benefits to using them. Although personally, one of my favorite perks is the fact that they have over 3,200 servers in 100 plus countries, meaning my streaming selections are endless with Surfshark. All I gotta do is change my location and there you go, a whole new updated library. Or you know how the NFL's made it required that teams have to alert officials they're gonna try an onside kick? Well, thankfully, that's not what you have to do with airlines, since Surfshark allows you to go unnoticed around that price gouging to get the best deals available. And speaking of deals, right now when you use my code PHILLYSPECIAL, you'll get 3 months free of all the benefits. The best part on top of all of that is Surfshark is risk-free, offering a 30-day money-back guarantee, with one subscription literally being all you need for every device and individual in your household. They also have a no-logs policy, meaning they're not saving or storing your data, which is an absolute must for me for any VPN. So go ahead and click my link in the description and use code PHILLYSPECIAL to get started. Now, I think it's fair to say that Howie is not just getting started looking at edges in the draft, which is understandably why Howie Roseman is showing significant interest in Penn State edge Chop Robinson. By the way, I talked more about Chop in a recent video, but while I don't think he's worth a first-round selection because it's pretty evident this dude struggles with length and doesn't necessarily have the most polished pass-rushing game, I do think his potential is intriguing enough to consider on day 2, if he's still available. And I'd say the same for another top 30 visit with Western Michigan's Marshawn Kneeland, who got an invite to Philly thanks to his extreme physicality at 6'3", 275 pounds. I mean, this dude's a wrecking ball, being described by scouts as a car crash from an action movie in a good way. No, like for real, I didn't make that up. That's literally the scouting report I'm reading here. With a 22-year-old not being afraid to put his body on the line every snap while trying to bull rush and violently rip free to get to the quarterback or create stops behind the line. Oh yeah, and remember the whole deal about Howie Roseman targeting and really loving athletic players in the draft? Well, look no further than Kneeland, since he tested as the most athletic overall edge at the NFL Combine. Probably helps that he was a former high school tight end as well. Yet another area that just screams Philly is he's typically been the most effective in his career when he's standing up, which is exactly where he'd be in Vic Fangio's scheme, which I also saw that Kneeland's been praised multiple times in various scouting reports for a constant motor and really never giving up on the play, so you gotta love that. Now, the other areas he needs to work on are developing a few counter moves and really just developing a stronger arsenal of moves in the pass rush in general. But I think it's promising for a guy with his size and another one of those top 30 visits to keep your eye on in day 2, because it's pretty clear by now that Howie's targeting an edge in the draft, although it probably won't be anything but O-line in the first round, with a Philly voice saying, "Don't be surprised if offensive tackle is taken at 22. As Jimmy Kimsky writes, ultimately the Eagles draft offensive linemen with premium picks because they hope that those guys can be mainstays on their line for the long haul, and also saying it's just what they do and there's really no reason to believe that will change given their desire to always field one of the best offensive lines in the NFL." And Reuben Frank kind of furthers that, saying the offensive tackle for the Birds is an underrated position of need. Okay, yeah, that's probably fair considering that Fred Johnson and Tyler Steen are the main 2 options out there. Look, no offense to them, but I think that the further that this goes, I'm starting to come to terms with the fact that, yeah, we'll go O-line at 22. Now again, that's not really what I want to happen, but if it does, maybe you go with an edge later like I mentioned, or possibly free agency to pick up an edge. With ESPN's Rich Cimini saying John Franklin Myers could be the odd man out after the Reddick trade, since his roster spot is a $16.4 million cap hit. Plus, the Jets' former first-round pick in Will McDonald may not be able to see the field as much. And could the Birds look to swoop in and take advantage of a possible move? Realistically, no, because first off, I don't see the Jets doing this. I mean, they're literally going all in right now to win, so just because their rookie can't see the field doesn't mean they're going to out this guy because they need a little bit more cap space. Also, I can't really envision Howie going after this move either. However, there's one name that Anthony DeBona threw out there that could make some sense in New York's Isaiah Simmons, because not only have the Eagles been linked to Simmons in the past, but he fits the mold of the young, athletic, underachieving player that was a former high draft pick. Like, I mean, yeah, this dude was a former number 8 overall pick in the 2020 draft, and at 6'4", 240 pounds with a 4.39 40 time, I've got to imagine Fangio would love that type of weapon on defense. Plus, the 25-year-old's used to the Fangio scheme based on other defense he's played on and had to learn while also lining up all over the field. Now, sure, you're right. He did say last season that he was tired of playing linebacker and that he didn't want to necessarily continue playing that. Yet, I don't know, that could have just been a way to find his way out of Arizona or get away from Jonathan Gannon. Regardless, what do y'all think about his potential in Philly? Like, depending on how much he's asking, I'd love to get another athlete who's got that hybrid versatility and see how Fangio can utilize him. It's still not replacing Haas, but at this point, it's really you're not going to replace the individual, it's just got to be by aggregate. Anyway, speaking of Simmons though, Justin Simmons still hasn't signed, but I'm wondering if that's more unlikely now after the Birds decided on one safety decision, after extending Reed Blankenship, who received the second most performance-based pay distributions in the NFL this season. So now the Ghost has another year tacked onto his contract for what's actually a fairly low amount, with Mike Garafolo sharing it's a fully guaranteed $3.9 million over the next 2 years, where he can earn another $1.3 for playing time and Pro Bowl bonuses. First off, good for him, and he's clearly made several plays at times. So to lock up a safety for a very low amount, I think is a win. Although yeah, like many guys on the defense, he's also had his moments. But despite what some people are saying, this doesn't necessarily mean you're moving on from Justin Simmons. Alright, I'll agree with what Jeff said on the topic though, in that some people are too low on Reed and some people are too high on him. He's a solid piece to have in the secondary, while reserving judgment on all the young guys until we see them with a DC that actually runs a defense. What do you think? Are you reserving judgment, or are you just ready to decide now? Personally, I'm not writing off Reed. It's just in my mind, we still need one more player of a Justin Simmons caliber. Because as I've said before, you literally just lost your best defensive player. Now, while we're talking about secondary, there's another interesting top 30 visit to report after Jake Rabati shared Philly is bringing in Kentucky cornerback Andrew Phillips. If you're not familiar with Phillips, he's a 6', 187-pound corner who ran a 4.48 at the combine and is described by Lance Zierlein as a guy with a lot of unknowns, citing a number of completions given up and lucky drops from opposing receivers. Oh, and also that Phillips isn't too great in man-to-man coverage. I know, that doesn't sound too promising at all. However, he is a ridiculous athlete, with Zierlein saying he's got tools to suggest his best football is ahead of him. Anthony DeBona also reminded that this is the second time the Eagles will meet with him formally, having done so at the Combine, so safe to say the interest is there. And for those wondering, Phillips seems to be somewhere around the late third round range based on a couple mocks I've seen. Curious, how many of you guys have looked into Phillips and what are your thoughts on him? Also curious for those that maybe haven't, what are your thoughts based on hearing this so far? Alright, there's still lots of time and tons more Eagles news to come before the draft, and I got you covered for all of it. Do me a favor, hit that like button and I'll catch you on the next one. This has been the Philly Special.